Happy Wednesday, folks. I'm so glad that you can join us. This is Ask Evelyn, where we answer your questions about garbage, recycling, compost, and other trashy topics. Every week, we answer questions from inquisitive folks like yourself. And every week, we also take on a weekly waste challenge because, we're always looking for ways to up our game when it comes to recycling, compost, and waste prevention. So, we are just really excited. So let me introduce myself. I'm Becca Fong, and I am the solid waste residential outreach planner for Seattle Public Utilities. And we're going to be joined here in a minute by my lovely co-host, and I'll let him introduce himself when he comes on. I wanted to let all of you out there know and give you guys a quick reminder, which I do every week, that this show is run on your questions. So please keep them coming. The 2 questions we have this week came into our Ask Evelyn email box. So you can always send questions to us that way, or also feel free, put it in the comments of the show. We'll try to get to them as they come through live. You can also always find us on Facebook and Twitter as well, or on Instagram outside of the show time. And we'll try to get back to you. But it's always great to hear from you. It makes it so much more exciting to just see what's going on, which is fantastic. So this month, we are going to be really focused on recycling. And in particular, we're going to be focused on recycling right. So last month, what we really focused on was kind of dealing with summer's bounty. August was such a beautiful month. It's still beautiful right now. But, thinking of all of the great produce that's out in the garden and how do we really kind of prevent food waste, that's what we were focused on. But this month, all right, folks, get ready. It's going to be recycled right. So, of course, we get a lot of questions from you guys about those different topics. And we're going to really hone in on those. So please send your questions our way. So, all right. So I've got my lovely co-host here. Pat, would you want to introduce yourself? Thank you for joining us.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pat Kaufman. I'm the recycling program manager for the commercial sector for Seattle Public Utilities, helping businesses recycle and compost. So happy to be here. Thanks, Becca.
Yeah. Pat, I was just telling folks that, last month we focused on a lot of food waste prevention because there was so much kind of plentiful produce,
right,
both in gardens and at markets. And this month we're really going to be focusing on recycle right. So, we'll certainly cover a lot of other topics, but recycle right is really focusing in on how to know what to put into your recycle cart or places to take materials that don't go into your cart. And really a big focus of that is to cut down on a term that we use a lot called contamination. Right. And contamination is anything in the carts or dumpsters that you have at your homes in the commingled recycling stream. It's stuff that doesn't belong in there is what we call contamination and can really kind of mess the world up.
People want to recycle so much. They want to recycle. Oh, it must be recyclable. I'm sure they can do something with it, but that's not the right approach. It's not the blue card is not a wishing well, right. What some people have said. There's some guidelines here and we want to recycle right. So
totally. And that's what we're here to do, right? Like that's kind of the kernel of Ask Evelyn is like, we're here to answer your questions to help you recycle right. It might not always be at the cart, but there's lots of other ways to recycle. So keep your questions coming. So, Pat, are you ready to kick us off with one?
Hey, I'm sorry I was a little late to log on today. Yeah, you bet. Let's get this going here. Okay, so question 1 comes to us. It's a good question. Hi, this Coleman Camp fuel metal container is empty, and I'm wondering how I should get rid of it. There is no value. It's just a regular lid that opens straight off. I'm sorry, there is no valve. It is just a regular lid that opens straight to the container. It was a 1-gallon container when full. This is from Kelly. So I have a picture here. Picture's worth 1,000 words, right?
Absolutely.
So this, folks, is what we're talking about. If you ever had one of those old school Coleman Camp stoves, the green ones, you used to pump them up and then you turn on the 2 burners and it was great. They're great for camping. A lot of folks have moved on to the new, compressed gas version, but this is a classic white gas. Yeah, people are moving into those more often. In fact, it's hard to find one of those old school camp stoves. I mean, you can find them on Craigslist easily, but those are, you have to pour the fuel in and stuff. So anyway, those cans, it's a can, it's an open top can. So if it is totally vapor air dry, not just drip dry, but totally dry, then one could could put it in the recycle bin. There just can't be any threat or any possibility of fuel actually reaching the recycle center. It's a, it's a big mechanical facility with a lot of moving equipment, and that is not a place to, to introduce any kind of a volatile material. So really have to be careful about that. I would even go so far as like take the can. It's kind of a wide can. I could show the picture again, but
yeah,
it's a wide enough can. After you've totally dried it out and set it out in the sun and let it totally vapor dry, you could like step on it in the middle and then crimp the top and the bottom in to make it more of a flat container so that it's obviously empty and not a container to the sorters. It'll probably interact better in the recycle center if it's not such a bulky, boxy metal item. So that's just a thought, to prepare your items a little better.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, the reason that Kelly wrote to us was that, I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. We talked about these kind of Coleman canisters because it's, camping season, folks are still camping. And it really is, it says right here, it says like danger, flammable, people are very aware. And Kelly, thank you so much for writing into us, because I think that this is very important. The canister that, that you showed us, Pat, it's like the fact that you can open it and let it completely vapor dry, so there's no way that it could be combustible, is really the key. And so, we have like, canisters like this, which you cannot open, right? There's no way to make sure you get all the gas out of it.
You shouldn't even try. I mean,
don't try. Please don't try.
I mean, for folks who are like like really into this stuff, there's YouTube videos where you could go on and you can, but I'm just saying that there are people out there who want to recycle them. And, some folks do that, use them a lot. They manage them in a way that they want to, not through our program, but they want to take back metal recycling. And so again, a flattened version of that round unit you have is something that a recycle take back center won't freak out about, because it's not obviously under pressure if it's been flattened. But so for our guidelines for the majority of folks, those are only accepted at the HHW, household hazardous waste drop-off sites, which we have North Seattle and South Seattle. We have both, times and schedules of open hours vary a little bit, but you don't happen to know them off the top of your head, do you?
I do, actually. So I think that the best way to go to household hazardous waste, so I live fairly close to one in the south end of Seattle, which is right across from the transfer station. Which is in South Park. And then the one up north is up on 125th and Stoneway, about that. So the one up north, and we'll have links to all of this in the show, that one is open up north. That one's open Sunday through Tuesday, 9:30 to 4:30, those 3 days. And then the one in the south end is open Thursday through Saturday, 9:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. So, awesome. We did talk about these compressed ones that you can't completely empty. We've got some of these like backpacking ones as well. Again, a valve you can't completely empty it. You can make sure that they're completely empty. Like these, I'm not hearing anything. You could put these in the garbage, but really the best thing to do is to take them to household hazardous waste, because what they will do is completely safely off gas the rest of it, capture the fuel, and then they will take the steel for recycling. So those of you out there who I know you are super recyclers watching us on Ask Evelyn, just, put these aside, get a load together for household hazardous waste. They take all kinds of great stuff. I usually go like once every 2 or 3 months. I take these, I take, household batteries. I take, I had a couple of cans of stain that had escaped me that I will take to them as well. Completely free. One other really great thing about household hazardous waste, which is sponsored, it's a partnership for us with King County. If you are unable to physically leave your house or get there, they will come to you. So we will put a link to their website. And if you need somebody to come by and pick some stuff up at your house because you are not able to physically get there, they'll do that too. So in short, Kelly, thanks for writing in.
Yeah.
Top off your metal container. Pat, I think your tip about, making sure it's flattened and open so it doesn't look like a danger is fantastic.
Yeah, right. Those differences between, drip dry, which we talk about for like cups or jugs or whatever, it's like, and vapor dry. I mean, this is a volatile material, so you really don't want to have any liquid left in there if you're going to recycle. And then the other thing I mentioned, final comment on those green Coleman things, is it just seems like there's a market to me. I mean, I'm just talking about stuff here. It seems like there's a market for a refillable for that type of container because it's a different size diameter connection than the classic, backyard barbecue unit with the big 5-gallon propane tank. So it seems like, something like that's got to come on strong here soon because these single-use containers is just not ideal,
Yeah. I mean, I'm getting out of my lane a little bit here, but I would imagine that, here's the outlet valve. This may be how they actually fill them. So maybe that's a little homework. Maybe I'll follow up with Household Hazardous Waste and see what vendor they use instead of just taking this straight to recycling. They may actually have a program where they actually recycle them and refill them. So that's a possibility. But awesome question, Kelly. I think that's super important. You always want to make sure that you're safe. And you're safe, your neighbors are safe, the people that are drivers and collectors and the operators of the MRF are safe. So that's awesome. Please, absolutely. Those are the questions that we love getting. So, all right. Our next question also came in through the Ask Evelyn email box. And this one comes from Aaron. So, hello, can you please tell me if this freezer paper, and Aaron sent us an image, can be recycled, assuming that it's clean? So the picture that she showed was kind of what I think of as the standard butcher paper. And I know for me, when I was younger, butcher paper was just a super thick paper. And that was it. It was just a fiber. When I was growing up, it used to be pink. I don't know if anybody else remembers pink butcher paper, but that was what I remembered. I did happen to buy something at the butcher recently. And so I had another kind of example of what Aaron was talking about. You can see clearly that this is shiny, right? Very, very shiny. And then on the other side, it's kind of it's a paper. So something like this has to go in the garbage, right? And so Pat, I kind of want to kick this over to you because you really talk about this a lot, about kind of these this is like food packaging kind of things and multiple materials. So it does have to go in the garbage, but why is that?
Well, so we do accept poly-coated paperboard. We do accept milk cartons, juice boxes,
I got another crap for you, Pat. Like something like this.
A frozen food box. There you go. That's a recyclable container. Another great item. That's even better. This one's actually doesn't have that much of a high sheen to it. I think it's a kind
this
of
one's real shiny.
That one's real shiny. And that paper you held up was real shiny. So so the whole reality is for the recycle system, they want the fiber. They do not want this poly coating stuff. They deal with the poly coating. They have to screen it out and filter it out and go through a lot of process to get back to just fiber so they can run it through the mill and make more paper. Well, when you're talking about paper that's like butter wrapper or, butcher paper, there's just it's almost like there's more poly than there is fiber. The fiber is just like a medium to attach poly to,
For sure with this. For sure. I mean, look at that. That is so shiny.
I know. Yeah. And it performs great. Provides the function that everybody wants. They make it, they sell it, they use it. We like it. It does all the things that it's supposed to do. It's just a zero sum, end game kind of deal. It's not good for any system for recycling. So, to the extent that you can kind of direct your purchasing to avoid that, okay. But the general idea in the Recycle Right program is just guidelines. We're just saying like a thin paper with poly coating is not recyclable, but a paperboard container, like a carton, like a milk carton or a juice box or a frozen food box, there's a lot of fiber in there. We're talking about, layers of fiber that make up that box before the poly coating's added. The poly coating is added on these just to keep condensation down and stuff like that. The poly coating's added to that paper to create the strength, essentially, for the product. So big difference there. Sometimes there'll be a product out there that's sort of in that middle range, and it makes it kind of hard to figure out what to do with that. Even like if you buy like a pack of batteries or something, there can be a heavy coated poly layer that is where they put the ink and label as well. And then if you peel that off, you end up with just like a piece of cardboardy fiber, which is what you want to recycle. So it's really, managing your paperboard recycling a little as best as you can. I'm not saying you have to peel off the poly coating on these at all. I'm just saying that sometimes, it's impossible to separate the layers on the product that you showed us. But on other things that are more like product packaging, sometimes it's helpful, as a consumer to the recycle system to remove those poly coating layers if it's something you can get your fingernail under and just peel it off. It's a good, helpful thing to do.
And I think the thing
that's like
probably,
recycle really right. It's really recycle, not just recycle right.
But that's what we love about Ask Evelyn, right? Is that folks, kind of why they write to us and why you guys are tuning in is that you guys want to know kind of the reasoning behind it, right? We created the Recycle Right kind of campaign for some simple tips and tricks. I wanted to kind of point out, like, we really focus on like the top 5 categories of things, like paper, which includes paperboard, newspaper, like writing paper, cardboard, flattened, glass, jars and bottles, and metal that's larger than 3 inches, and then also plastic bottles, jugs, containers, and tubs. Of course, like we were just talking about with this paper and paperboard, there are some nuances, which I know you guys all love. But if you can remember those top 5, that really covers, I would say, about 90% of the material that we want to have in the cart. Right? Those little nuances are important to understand to kind of keep that contamination that we talked about at the top of the show down, to make sure only the stuff that can actually be processed and then recycled into a new product goes into your cart. I think the cool kernel that I always love hearing you talk about is that the value in paper is the length of the fiber, right? Because as it gets cut down more and more, it's not as valuable. I mean, you think about like the fiber length in toilet paper, right? Like that's it. You're not, we won't even talk about, or like paper towels, right? Like you can't recycle those because the fiber is so small that by the time a processor took it, it would just be mush. Versus things like this, where it's worth it for them to go through and peel the poly coating off to get the thick fiber or that box that you showed there. So I think that's
it's overall, there's just, and the grades of paper are a fascinating, commodity marketplace. Back in the, in the 90s, there were like white paper and colored paper and newspaper and several different types. In the office, you'd see different bins lined up by the copy machine and stuff. And nowadays, the markets are just mashed together in commodity markets of like, it's mixed paper. It's pretty much, it's all going to be together in mixed form. And if you're not cardboard or you're not newspaper, then you're mixed paper. And we're just trying to maintain value in that commodity, like reduce the plastic coating as much as possible so that it is just fiber they're working with.
Totally. So thank you, Aaron. I think that's a really good question. One other point I wanted to bring up, I'm not sure what you're trying to use this for, but if it's to kind of create a barrier when you're wrapping food to be frozen, one thing that I use is wax paper or parchment, because then when I'm done with that, I can put it in the compost and it still creates that barrier between the food and kind of the plastic or whatever container you're freezing it in, which just kind of helps with that frost if it's going to be in the freezer for a while, and then you can compost that. So that's kind of another alternative that may work. I mean, the butcher paper I think is probably less expensive, but wax paper is fairly inexpensive as well. So that's another option. All right, so now's the part of our show where we get to our weekly waste challenge, where every week we pick a new tip or trick. We kind of couch it on our monthly themes, and with August being kind of dealing with the bounty of summer and how to prevent food waste, we had our last weekly waste challenge, which was meal planning for the week. And we were really focusing on waste prevention and trying to either support local producers or use things that were hyper local. Like for me, I used a lot of stuff from my garden. But Pat, I'm curious how you did for meal planning. For me, it's always an aspirational goal, but how'd you do?
Well, I think it's a funny thing that the whole COVID pandemic has created. We really do try and go to the store just about once a week and load up, so we are thinking about dinner. Dinner is mostly the meal that we plan for. Everything else is just like, it's open season, like grab whatever you want, make whatever you want, whatever you want. But dinner is the time. So we think of the protein part and the veg part and salad and this, and like manage our bun and bread inventory accordingly. And so it's really, it's like, oh, should I have this? Oh, look, there's 2 buns there that are about to, be a little too, like, not fresh. So maybe I should make a sandwich out of a hamburger bun today, just kind of managing like that. So it's meal planning, but it's also like just management of the stuff. But so the part that I did, part of the challenge, I mean, we've been doing this, but is that really looking closer at the frozen food aisle, you know, not processed frozen foods, but frozen hamburgers, or we've been buying the Beyond Burger, you know, that new
Oh,
Impossible Burger type thing. We've been buying those burgers in frozen form because they have them
cool.
in refrigerated form too. But so I've been doing those. And then the other thing is we have here in my neighborhood a local produce stand,
Oh,
an
nice.
independent, you know, produce stand. It's not a farmer's market, you know, but it's a 7 day a week. It's called Top Banana up here in Ballard. And so
Oh, I
I
love
popped
that
in
one with
there.
the monkey. Yeah.
Yeah, with the monkey on the roof. That's right. So, you know, he there. It's a great place, and some of the items there are very ripe, like totally ready to eat right now.
But
So,
but that's perfect if you're gonna
that's
have it
great.
tonight.
Yeah. So that's in my travels of, like, you know, bouncing around here and there. I've popped in there a couple of times this week and got a couple of things that. So I'm just trying to shift, you know, my buying a little bit more local, a little bit more small like that. Instead of going to the, you know, the big box grocery store all the time for produce and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of from the challenge. Those were the couple
Yeah.
things that I kind of took away from it to think more about my purchasing. So what about you? Tell me a little more about your garden harvest.
Yeah, totally. So there's kind of two things. Like I said, meal planning is always an aspirational thing, and dinner is the big meal at my house. And I have to say, I still get a little stressed out about like what we're going to do for meal planning, but I'm definitely similar where I shop the pantry. You know, I kind of shop the pantry and the
Right.
fridge to see like what needs to be eaten. And that's kind of why I fall apart a little bit on meal planning, is that sometimes there are those two buns and I'm like, if I had this big plan, how did those fit in? Um, but one really great thing that I did was we created kind of a breakfast menu, and this is not my unique idea. Another friend and coworker of ours had come up with this. You know, with my two kids in the morning, it's like we need to kind of get them up, and my kids are little and they're still in that phase where they may not eat what you put in front of them. And so what we did was created a breakfast menu. So we did it in two ways. Essentially, there's like 4 or 5 items that we always have on hand that are breakfast items. And then
Mm-hmm.
we assign those breakfast items for each day of the week. And then that made it so it was a little bit easier for the kids to either, one, know what was going to be available for breakfast, or if they didn't want that one thing, they could choose one of the 4 or 5 things that we always have on hand, which just,
Yeah.
for me, meal planning is certainly waste prevention, but for me, it's also just kind of, it's stress reduction, right? Like I need the routine to take
Yeah.
the guesswork out of it, and just makes the day
Right.
work so much faster, and definitely streamlines my shopping, because we go every 2 weeks to the grocery store. So we
Yeah.
really kind of need to be aware of what we're buying. And
Yeah.
so just really quickly, my kids came up with mnemonic devices. And so it's Muffin Monday, it's Toast Tuesday, it's Waffle Wednesday, it's Thankful Thursday, which means I get to put whatever I want in front of them. And then it's Fresh Fruit Friday. So,
All
you
right.
know, they can kind of remember what those things are. And then we always have cereal and yogurt and granola on hand if they want to have that in a pinch. Um,
You know, that's
but
great, Becca. That makes me think of like the back to school time too. What a, you know, it's, I always loved in grade school looking at the monthly lunch calendar, like what we're going to eat this, you know, next day or whatever, and like thinking about whether I want to bring lunch or not and all that
oh,
stuff. So
totally.
that's going to be such a bummer not to have that. Maybe you can, like, you have a great model for recreating that or creating that for your household for the lunch, you know, lunchtime as well during school. Adds a little more structure, a little more something to it,
Yes.
you know?
Absolutely. And then honestly, like the biggest part of meal planning is that my family's in on it, because we do have a big garden. And so speaking of things that using from the garden, like my kids are probably tired. I know they're tired of eating green beans. I have served them green beans in so many different ways. I have also frozen a whole bunch of those, which is great because we're going to really love those in January. But
Yeah.
finding creative ways to use those. And also they get to choose, right? When I'm like, hey, kids, this is what we have, what are some creative ways you want to make these? And that has really helped. You know, I'm like, we're going to eat them. It's what we have. So let's figure that out. And so maybe staggering green beans every other day has been helpful. So yeah, that's been pretty fun. So I haven't quite gotten to dinner meal planning, but the breakfast meal planning has been really fun. That's been really great. And
I
been super.
love the menu idea. You know, when I was little, just a quick story. When I was young, I have two brothers who are very close to me in age. So the three of us, it'd be like, you know, the dog days of summer or whatever. Who knows what time of year it was? But my mom would put on an apron and she would pretend to be a waitress and she'd take an order from us. She'd give us a menu. And it was just fun to mix it up like that. And so it may be like
Oh
the
yeah.
same old meal, but if you can present it to the kids in a different way, it's kind of, you know, adds a little something different and fun to the
Oh,
day.
Totally. I mean, they came up with the different mnemonic devices
Nice.
for the breakfast items for the day. So I'll put that together and share that for folks. And
Nice.
hopefully you guys will come up with a little meal plan. You don't have to have kids. I think it's helpful for me when I'm waking up and I haven't
Yeah.
had coffee. I'm like, what's today? I'm like, oh, it's Wednesday. It's Waffle Wednesday. Right. We're going to have that and some yogurt. So fantastic.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
All right, folks. So next week's weekly waste challenge is, since we're doing Recycle Right for this month. So Pat, we are going to be looking at we get questions a lot about how clean is clean.
Mm-hmm.
And so next week, what we need to bring back to share with all of you guys is the top 3 toughest things to clean and our tips and tricks for cleaning them. I know you've got some good ones, Pat.
Oh yeah. This would be a great one. I mean, and there's like, okay, I don't want to get into it too right now because this is for next week. But yeah, we'll talk about this and come back to it next week. It'll be fun.
Definitely. So if any of you guys have different items that you're like, oh my God, I have so much trouble with this, or I don't know how to get it clean, or how clean does it have to be? Send us those questions, please. Again, through the email, askevelyn@seattle.gov, through our 3 social channels, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And with that, that's a show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Ask Evelyn. We hope that you guys find this as useful information from your utility. And we'll see you next week, Wednesday at 11:30. Pat, you look like you want to say something.
Time out.
Okay.
Next week might be a little shift in timing.
Sure.
We're gonna hold the time for 11:30 on Wednesday, but
yes.
we might, if y'all tune in at 11:30 and see a post from the SPU Instagram feed, we might actually be going at more like 1 o'clock that day. We'll see. I'm sorry I don't have more information for you now, but just a little tease there that we might shake up the schedule next week and do something a little different. But basically, we'll come back to the challenge for sure.
Yeah, and either way, we'll see you on Wednesday. So definitely tune in, check back here at 11:30, and either you'll see us or you'll see some more information about checking in with us a little bit later. So with that, I'm Becca Fong, and remember, life's simpler with less stuff.
Hey, and I'm Pat Kaufman. Remember to recycle right. Thanks.
All right, folks, have a great week, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
See you, Becca. Bye.
Bye.